Hey folks, Amanda here. Just a quick heads up that from time to time, the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast does include some adult language. So if you've got kids with you, you may just want to hold on to this episode to listen to a little later. Enjoy! Welcome back to the Survivor's Guide to Thriving podcast, the show for people who are ready to break out of survival mode in order to build a truly thriving life. I'm Amanda Solman, and along with Mark Jewell and the rest of my team here at Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, we break down common roadblocks that keep people stuck surviving and share ideas to help you thrive each and every day.
All right. So, John, you came to me a couple weeks ago and you asked me if I had any resources available on how to celebrate wins or what it looked like to celebrate wins. Can you just start us off? Just tell us, where did that question come from?
Yeah, it's a great question, Wade. So at MGST, we work with a lot of managers and leaders of companies, organizations, and teams. And all of these leaders that we work with really want to understand or want to explore ways where they can get their team to be more effective, right? To what we would call thrive, or even transcend. How do we get our team to perform better? And what we talk a lot about is this whole idea of appreciating, celebrating, and accelerating, right? Where if we appreciate people, we celebrate people, we get to accelerate individuals' growth and the team's growth. And this has been coming up for me a lot lately as I've been working with some new managers or new leaders of teams. They just moved into a new role, just took over a team, and they're wondering, how do I get my team to perform a little bit better? Right? And so this idea of this appreciation celebration comes up quite a bit. And there was one situation where this certain leader's team had really gone above and beyond to complete this project. I mean, worked overnight, long hours, and they got the job done, and they got it done like so efficiently that they ended up getting a bonus. Like this other company paid them a bonus. Okay, so I asked this individual, I said, okay, so how did you celebrate and appreciate what your team did for you? And he tells me, well, just the completion of the job was celebrating enough. Right? Just the fact that they get to go home a little ahead of the schedule was appreciation enough. And I thought about that, and I was like, I understand where he's coming from, right? Us getting to go home, after something is done, or really like we get paid to do a job, so we're expected to perform. I understand that, okay? But if we want to take leaders to a new level, our teams to a new level, there has to be more. We have to differentiate ourselves above and beyond what the status quo is. And so as I was trying to relate this concept of appreciation and celebrate to him, I might have missed the point a little bit. I just wasn't quite getting through. So in my mind, I'm like, you know what? Who's the guru or who's the master at this appreciation and celebration topic? And so I go, who do I call? I call up Wade, and I say, Wade, do we have any resources? Do we have a podcast or a blog or anything that I can provide to this individual and really individuals going forward on this concept of appreciation and celebration? And that's when you responded and you're like, I don't believe we do, but let's do a podcast. So here we are today, and now I want to ask you, Wade, because you're really the one that introduced this concept to me. So I want to ask you, why is this concept of celebrating and appreciating people, why is that so important to you?
Yeah, so Mark Jewell was the one that introduced this concept to me. So I'm just passing it along, I guess. And I'm sure we do have a previous podcast on this topic. But one thing about, really good content is you can go back and you can come at it from a different angle. You can come at it, because the work environment evolves, and when things start to appear different, all of a sudden things have new meaning to them. So I wanted to really dig in here today and really highlight this, because whenever I think of this subject, I think of a conversation I had, it's probably a year and a half ago, with the VP of agronomy. And, I was having a similar conversation with him, and his feedback for me is, after a long pause, was, Wade, I suck at celebrating. And at that time, it was always, what's next? What's next? What's next? And you knock things out, and you go to the next thing. Knock things out, go to the next thing. And that can be addictive in some ways. But we get caught up in the what's next, what's next, what's next. I'll be happy when I get that next thing done. And it's only a matter of time before that eventually burns everybody out. And so this concept of celebrating a win, feeling good in the moment, we need to reward our bodies chemically. Otherwise, our bodies will eventually say, what's the point? And we start to shut down. Whether we verbalize that or not, we start to lose interest in knocking out that next project. So I think a lot of this has to do with, for the last, 20, 30 years, celebrating a win hasn't been necessary. It's just get your job done, do the next thing. I had a boss tell me one time, if you don't hear anything from me, take it as you're doing fine. And that might have been okay. That was how he was brought up through his organization. But in this day and age, we need to do better. And so taking time to celebrate wins, it's people hear the word celebrate and they think monetary, they think it costs money, but not necessarily. It doesn't have to be this big spend, or all of a sudden it's pay to play, and unless there's something in it for me, I'm not going to do something. It's not. It doesn't have to go to that extreme. And those are a couple of situations or a couple of thought processes that I just want to shoot down right away. Those are extremes, and that is not what we're talking about here today. So I guess that just taking the workplace and moving it into the next 30 years is why this is so important to me, John.
Yeah, I really like how you bring it up, because it's really the way we approach work has evolved, in the past 30 years, really even 100 years, where I think, so many years ago it used to be, you show up to work, you get paid, and that's kind of your reward. And now people are looking more for fulfillment at work. They're looking for more of a purpose, not just, hey, I get a paycheck, cool, and I get to put food on the table for my family. I think now, so how we've managed in the past, it's not how we can continue to lead in the future. So I listened to this TED Talk by Mike Robbins, and I believe it's the Power of Appreciation is the title of the TED Talk. And Mike Robbins is an author. He's an ex-professional baseball player, and what he actually and he studies appreciations. And what he on his TED Talk, he stated a study that actually asked people why they left their job. And get this, Wade, 64% of people said that they left their job because they didn't feel appreciated or valued, right? It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about the quality of work or the things they get to do at work. It was they didn't feel appreciated or valued. And that absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, and so let's just rewind this just a little bit. You talk about the meaning behind what we're doing, the fulfillment. There's actually a conversation I had with my 74-year-old 74-year-old father here just a couple of weeks ago. But when he was starting out, it was all just work as hard as you have to, just so you can put food on the table. That's how that was his thought process. In the work environment, he was on a farm, an entrepreneur, but in a work environment, there was the thought, okay, you sign up with a good company, and then you put your whole life, your whole career into that company, and then you get your gold watch and you retire, and then you can enjoy life. These are things of the past, and things are evolving. And so if we don't take time to lean into this celebration, we're going to lose some of our best people, because there are those that get this, and there are those that don't. There are people who get Brene Brown. We reference Brene Brown all the time, and then there are other people who think of this should be like John Wayne. Emotion is a sign of weakness. I just need to come in. I'm the boss. I've got all the answers. You just need to do your job. Don't give me any drama, and go home. Henry Ford said, all I want was two hands, but unfortunately the body came with them. The person came with them. That was then. This is now, and we need to find ways to engage and help our people find meaning in what they do. Otherwise, they're going to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, completely agree. And I absolutely love the John Wayne versus Brene Brown concept, because that's what sometimes it feels like, doesn't it? Where, you got this John Wayne leader, guns a-blazing, there's no emotions, you do your job, and you move on. Where Brene Brown is all about like being vulnerable, and showing some of maybe your weaknesses, some of your emotions in this leadership, and really helping your team understand that we're not perfect. We're not perfect as leaders, and none of us are perfect. And so I really love that John Wayne versus Brene Brown comparison.
Yeah. So there's something I hadn't really thought of until just now on this topic, but Brene talks about how it takes courage to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is putting yourself out there emotionally and not knowing what the final outcome is going to be. John Wayne was never vulnerable because he always knew what the outcome was going to be. And so if you really look at where we're at here, in the 21st century, there's a whole boatload of stuff. We don't know how things are going to end up. But it takes courage to be vulnerable. It takes courage to be innovative and to change and to evolve and to get better. So, let's do it looking at it through the lens of our people and the value that each person brings, rather than what's the final number, what's the result, what's the P&L say. That got us here. Now we need to change and evolve to move forward from here.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to that, just wanted to mention that study again. Where 64% left because they felt unappreciated, or undervalued, from their leader and their company. And so when we talk about John Wayne versus Brene Brown, It's a whole new leadership style, and concept. And I think that's why this topic, what we're talking about now, is so important for leaders and organizations to take their teams and their companies to the next level. To go from surviving to thriving and even transcend.
Absolutely. So let's just kind of dig into this a little bit more, into why this is so important. So here at MJST, we talk about how what we focus on expands. And, and I just had a conversation with a senior leader yesterday that, everybody gets an emotion when they see that name on caller ID. And, when somebody sees your name on caller ID, what do they think? Are they thinking, oh, sweet? Or are they thinking, oh, no? Because I know from firsthand experience, I had a former boss who the only time I ever heard from him was when I had screwed something up, or when one of my people had screwed something up. And so whenever I saw his name on caller ID, it's like, uh-oh, now what? Because that was the only time I ever heard from him. So by focusing on what's right, we start seeing more of it. When people know that we're paying attention to not just where we mess up, but where we do things right, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to feel good about going that little extra mile, taking care of the customer, picking up that piece of trash, or staying for that last customer. They're going to do those things when those things are celebrated. The only time they hear from us is when they get beat down for screwing up, they're going to do it may not start here, but over time, they're going to evolve down to the bare minimum to get the paycheck.
Yeah. And think about what that does for communication. If the only time I ever hear from my boss is when I screwed up, chances are I'm going to let go to voicemail because I don't want to deal with that right now. Right. And if all I hear from my boss is when I screwed up, what are the odds that I'm actually going to reach out to my boss when I need help or I need something? So the communication levels of between us and the team also goes down, where pretty soon we're only communicating when things go wrong. And that's everybody. Right? And then our motivation for ever doing going above and beyond kind of dwindles down too, because we never actually get to celebrate the wins. We never actually hear good things. And if this is the culture that we're creating at work and within our teams, how do you think, or how motivated do you think I am to show up every day to perform my best, to become my best self? Probably not very much, right?
Right. Yeah, there's going to be challenges in any business for anyone. That's the nature of business, is overcoming those obstacles. But if we never take time to feel good about what is going right, and spend all of our time fixing problems, we're going to find more and more and more problems. And if you can just simplify it down to the point of who is going to be more likely to overcome the same problem, somebody that's highly engaged or somebody that's 50-50 engaged. I'll take the highly engaged employee every single time. So how do we get that? It's through this concept of celebrating the wins. Mm-hmm. All right. So I think we covered the, why is this so important? So why do we not do this? What's the reason for getting to this point, other than it's kind of been, taught by us, by our previous boss, why is this so difficult?
That I think is probably one of the most impactful questions. Why do we not celebrate and appreciate? And to me, I think it's part of our 95%. So, we grew up, not celebrating or not appreciating people. So it's part of our 95% to not do this. It's part of the cultures of the company to not do this. And if it's part of our 95%, if we don't naturally do this, then we're not practicing it, and we're not bringing it to the culture, right? So our culture doesn't do this. So, and if my culture doesn't do this, why would I do this?
Right? Yeah, it just kind of erodes over time. So people might come in all excited, just ready to light the world on fire, but the culture can just beat people down internally. So it beats the life out of people, and it basically ends up, what difference is it going to make? Who's going to notice, or what's the point? And so you kind of gradually decline down to that, what's the minimum I have to do to get the paycheck type mentality. So you talk about the 95%, and, a couple things about my 95% that I've reflected on over the last 3 years of working with MJST. We kind of grew up with all good things must come to an end mentality. So if we take time to celebrate the great year we had, we're going to pay for it in the next year. Or if we celebrate, a kid's performance, that's just going to mean that, we didn't believe in karma, we didn't believe in anything like that, but it was still kind of a, when's the other shoe going to drop type mentality. Did you have any of that, John?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like when something great happened in your life, you don't want to stop, take your foot off the gas and celebrate it for this moment, because you're kind of watching behind you of like, okay, what's coming up? What am I not seeing that's going to take me from the top of this mountain all the way back down into the lowest valley. Right? So a lot of what we do is we'll actually put up armor. I think Brene Brown talks about this in Dare to Lead, her book. We put up armor because when we celebrate, it's vulnerable. We're exposing ourselves, right? Or at least that's how we feel. So it's like that karma, that balance. If something good happens, something bad's got to follow. So instead of celebrating, what we're doing is we're looking behind us. We're waiting for that other shoe to drop, because how we were raised is it's going to happen. It's going to balance out. And the thing is what I really like what you mentioned earlier is that if we focus on what's right or we focus on what's wrong, we'll find it. So if we don't celebrate because we're looking for the bad thing to happen or what's going to go wrong, we're going to find it. All of a sudden, we're going to find the bad thing that does go wrong, because what we focus on expands. And so instead of celebrating, we focus on what's the bad thing.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of people that we work with, and myself included, a lot of it had to do with not feeling worthy. So, there's a big award, or, John, when you asked me that question, I'll let you tell the story about how you brought it up to me, and I'm case in point right here, everybody.
Yeah, it was such a great example, and kind of took you a step back when I mentioned it. But we were talking in preparation for this podcast. We were talking to why we don't do this, and one of the reasons why I believe is because we don't graciously accept compliments or appreciations. And so I used when we first were talking about this, I called you the guru or the master of celebrations and appreciations. And you're like, no, don't label me that.
Don't use that word. I said, yeah, don't use the guru word.
Yes, don't use the guru word. And for me, I was trying to give you a compliment, but what you were doing is you were kind of deflecting it. And you're saying, no, I'm not worthy of that compliment. And that's really where I think a lot of us, why we don't celebrate and appreciate more often, is because we ourselves are not great at receiving compliments. You know, part of our 95% is to be humble, right? So every time we get a compliment, we like to deflect it. I mean, the funny thing is, ever since we had this conversation, I've noticed how many compliments I've gotten, and I deflect them too. I'm like, stop this. because what happens is when if I give you a compliment and you just deflect it and you deny it and you're like, no, whatever it is, what are the odds I give you another one? And so where does this lead? What it leads to is a culture of nobody gives each other appreciations or compliments. Okay? And the reason why we give compliments is because there's a few reasons. One is because if I give you a compliment, Wade, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good about myself that I gave you credit, or I gave you a compliment, I share appreciation towards you. Another reason is if we receive compliments, we feel good about ourselves too. Okay? And if I give you a compliment and you graciously receive it, you accept the compliment instead of deflect it, what happens is actually it's scientifically proven that both of our serotonin levels get raised. So that's why it feels good to give a compliment and to receive one. Where if I give you a compliment and you don't accept it, I don't get that serotonin hit. And you may get the hit a little bit, but I don't get it. Right. So why would, if I'm not getting that feel-good chemical, why would I do it again? Because part of the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to feel good about myself.
Yeah, so when John brought that to my attention, everyone, that hit me right between the eyes, and I was like, oh, he's exactly right. I totally deflected his compliments, and that's case in point. But that's what's so awesome about working with people who are also continually improving themselves and making themselves better. They raise your game as well. They increase your awareness. And so that's me speaking for myself, working with John and the rest of the NJST team. They absolutely make each other better because we have this culture where we can share these types of things and learn from them. And in us learning from them, we help other people learn from them as well. How freaking awesome is that?
Yeah. And this is why it elevates teams so much too. And I forgot to mention this, when we were talking before, Wade, but if I give you a compliment or if I do something good for you to help you out and you receive it, if there's a bystander or a third party that sees this or hears this, their serotonin level actually gets raised too. So this is why it is so important to celebrate those wins and appreciate people within a team.
Yeah.
Because other team members that may not be involved with the win or whatever, the project or whatever it is, but they see this, they hear about it, their serotonin levels get raised. They feel good about themselves and the company that they're working for and the team that they're on. And so really, like, by doing this, it raises the levels of everybody.
Right. Yeah, this actually reminds me a lot of one of our past coaching clients and a current partner of ours and a senior VP who, in his own story, his appreciation, he was driving through the drive-through at Burger King, and the person at the window, she brought just such a great, bubbly personality. She was so engaging. He said, I just want to say, I really appreciate the level of energy you bring to your job. It's like, oh, I love it. I really, love what I do. I've been doing this for so long and whatnot. And he said, may I speak with your manager? And she just had this elemental look on her face, like, what did I do that was wrong? Well, the manager came and he told the manager what the person at the window, what he appreciated about her and how great she was doing. The manager's response was, that's it? That's all you brought me over here for? And then it's like they caught themselves and they realized, oh, shoot, thank you. They received the compliment, right? And so then she said, just because you said that, she's going to get $1 an hour raise. When you think about the ripple effect of that one compliment, not only did the employee at the window get the raise, but she's going to go tell other people. Other people at that location, that Burger King, are going to talk about it. The manager's serotonin went up. His serotonin went up. And then, this was the really cool part, his 13-year-old son, about a quarter mile down the road, said, that was really cool. And so when you celebrate a win, such as what this VP did, the ripple effect goes on exponentially.
Yeah, I really love how you brought the ripple effect conversation up, because a lot of us don't think about the ripple effect. What effect does this have on everybody else? I mean, not just when I celebrate you and appreciate you, it goes beyond you. Right? So, like we give each other compliments. You feel good about yourself, and so what is the ripple effect of the rest of the day? Because of how it made you feel. Yeah. And so now, how are you approaching your customers or the other people that you're interacting with, your family? That ripple effect that we sometimes forget as leaders of the impact that it has.
Yeah, those are the days, when you get recognized or thanked by your boss, you go home and you tell, your husband or your wife or your family, your friends, how great it is to work where you work. Think of the impact of that. How many people spend time talking about how great it is to work where they work versus how many sit around and complain, well, thank goodness it's Friday, or shoot, here's Monday, or great, we made it to hump day. Fantastic, we're halfway through. Are we just getting through work, or are we really embracing and thriving at work?
So let's dig into what does it mean to celebrate a win. So a win or an appreciation literally means to increase in value, adding to, or to make better. So John, what does this mean to you? What have you learned about this subject?
Yeah. So like what you said, appreciation adds to, right? So when we appreciate something, we add to the value of something. I think recognition is celebrating what we did, like a performance. Like if we got the sale, awesome, good for you. Let's recognize that, okay? Because that leads to uptake in performance, 23%. Appreciation takes it a step further. It recognizes, appreciation is more so about who we are as people, not really what we did, but who we are as people. And when we appreciate somebody, then that uptick in performance is 43%. Both are great, but if we start appreciations, how much more could our team, what's the production level of our team if we start appreciating?
There you go. So essentially, recognition is about the result or the act. The appreciation is about the person and the worth of the person who got the result or who did the act. So the difference between recognition and appreciation is a pretty fine line. But when you go back to the Mike Robbins data, so recognition equals 23% improvement, appreciation equals 43% improvement. That 20% is a huge distinction and a huge reason to really dig into how can we appreciate the people around us.
Yes. So as I was thinking about this, one example came to mind that I had that had a personal effect on me. And it was at my previous job, and I'm sure I got recognized for many things, but one specific situation is we're working on this project, and it was not really a mess, but we just couldn't really decide on which direction we wanted to go. So I was kind of one of the leaders in the project. So what I ended up doing is I just stepped up and said, this is the way we're going to go because this, and this. And that's the way we went. We did it, right? And my boss came in to me the next day and said, hey, John, I really appreciate your leadership on this project. It wasn't that the project turned out good or bad. It was, I appreciate the leadership in your project or on this project. And I think that's where, because when we celebrate a win, sometimes it's hard to, like, if we're just starting, like whether it's a salesperson just starting, in sales, and they're maybe they're not selling, they're not getting the sale that they wanted, or leaders not getting the results that they want to get in the team. So sometimes it's hard to celebrate like a win like that, that's where I think we got to redefine what a win is. And sometimes that win is just the quality of a person, like how this person showed up or how this person shows up at work or in a project or whatever it is. Because like maybe you can't celebrate a win or a sale because this person doesn't have hasn't sold anything yet. But what we can do is we can appreciate the energy and the effort that this person is going through and putting forth every day to try to get that sale. And when we appreciate that effort, I feel good about myself, because if we're just waiting to celebrate when somebody gets a sale or when a project gets completed, it may never come, right? Or I might wait a long time, but if I can appreciate the quality of a person, the value that they bring, that makes me feel good about myself.
Yeah, so I can hear people in our audience perhaps thinking, yeah, but we get measured on results. We have to make sales. We have to, get the numbers. We have to have the right P&L, or else, we're not going to have a job. And that's true. One thing that I just read over the weekend, though, as you talked about redefining what winning means, looking at just the numbers and only celebrating the numbers when they're good and shaming people or talking bad about the numbers when they're beating them up about the numbers when they're not, that is the old John Wayne mentality. What I was reading over this weekend is having more patience, seeing a longer view of what winning means. And so people might be thinking, okay, I don't have time for that. I need the numbers now. Well, if we look at what are the lead measures and we celebrate the right lead measures that a person is taking, the lag results are going to come. It's about having the confidence and the belief that, celebrating the right things up front, the lag results are going to take care of themselves. We just need to trust the process. And it is a process. It's not simply about the result. And when we simply when cultures only talk about the results, that's where people gradually disengage. That's where the best talent leaves the organization. That's where, people start doing the very minimum. And then after several years of disengagement, that's when we get phone calls from managers saying, yeah, my team just isn't buying enough bushels. Well, what are you doing to build relationships with them? Well, what do you mean? They just need to go buy bushels. No, there's a longer process to this. And when people trust the process and engage in the person, not just the number, that's where you get that sustainable long-term impact.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, because if we just focus on the result, right, it doesn't have the reward that we think it does. And then after we accomplish that result or achieve that result, then what? Right? What's the next step? So, I like to think about working out or exercising as an example. We run into a lot of clients that want to lose some weight, 10, 15, 20 pounds. Okay? And in all honesty, I want them to achieve that. I want them to lose the weight, but then what? If they do lose the weight, then what? So what I like to focus on more is what are those right behaviors? What are those things that lead to that weight loss? And that's what I like to focus on, because we're in all reality, it's not about the results. It's about who we become in the pursuit of the result. So what we want to do is establish the right behaviors, whether that is in working out. Are you showing up? Are you actually working out? And if you are, let's celebrate that. That is, you showed up to the gym and you got on the treadmill or you lifted weights or whatever that workout plan looks like for you. Let's celebrate that, because that is really what is going to get you to the true result. And really, why do people want to lose weight? Feel better about themselves, be more confident, look better, whatever it is. It's not really the 10 to 20 pounds they want to lose. It's the feeling that they get as the feeling that they get as a result of the person that they become. And that's why it's important to celebrate the right behaviors, those daily habits.
Yeah, so that's a great example. I'm going to add one more in terms of ag retail. The example that I think seems the most pertinent in my mind is seed sales. So seed sales is very seasonal, as is a lot of things in ag retail. But if the only thing we celebrate is when we get the sale, if that's the only time we say something or feel good about ourselves, how many days is that in a given year? There's only 10 or 15, maybe 20 days where we're going to feel good because we made a sale. Every other day is just going to be, well, what am I going to have to do to get one day closer to feeling good, right? And so when we broke it down, and actually, like you said, what's your why for wanting to do this? Using the agronomy example, if somebody is asked, why did you become an agronomist? It's not to sell X number of units more than I did last year. It's to help people. It's to work outside. It's to grow better crops. It's to be that trusted advisor helping the farmer prosper. So let's focus on that. Let's reward the right behaviors in building those relationships that will result in them only buying seed from us. It's having a longer view of what success looks like and rewarding the right behaviors, not just the end result. All right, so let's bring this thing home. Let's talk about what does it mean to celebrate wins. So I think we've established it's not just about spending more money, but when we take time to celebrate a job well done, what does that look like in the moment, John?
Yeah, so when we do celebrate that and appreciate it, it feels good. It feels good in the moment. So you give me a raise, yeah, it feels good. That has a finite result. So that feeling ends. Where if we celebrate and appreciate who I am and who we are as a team, that's an infinite response, because I feel good about myself, not just what I did, but myself. And that's when that's when I show up differently at work. That's when I show up differently on or in customer meetings, or show up differently at home even, is when we get to feel good about ourselves. And that's what this appreciation and celebration is really, really about.
Yeah. So if you think about Jeff Bezos, who is, I don't know if he is the richest man in the world, but he's in the top 3, right? If Jeff Bezos was asked to either sign a check for $1 million or invest a day at his time, what is easier for him? It'd be to sign a check, right? Regardless of the amount, that's not uncomfortable for him. His time is more valuable. And so when we think about how we show appreciation, if it isn't easy, that's worth more. Okay, so for the senior leadership team to go grill out for the agronomy team at grill steaks for them, on the one rainy day of spring, that's a great way to show how much you appreciate what they are doing for the company and for the customers. Taking time for a handwritten thank you note, it gets mentioned a lot. How many of us are actually doing it? I know I've got right here in front of me right now a handwritten thank you note that I'm never going to throw away. This meant the world to me when I got this from a dear friend, because it was so sincere. It was so authentic. It didn't cost anything but a stamp and a postcard, or a card. But how do we find more of that is so meaningful that it will never be forgotten or taken for granted?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we talk about what's our most valuable asset, and that's our time. Right? It takes time to write out that note, to handwrite that note and give it to you. So when somebody actually takes the time to sit down and do that, it means more, than just like I'm going to give you some money for a job well done. So that means more. Right. I had, when in my previous job, I was leading this team, and I was told that I couldn't give any more money to somebody, for like a raise. And I really wanted to show my appreciation for all the work this guy was putting in, and how hard he was working, and really the way he was running this part of this business. And I knew that he was a big Notre Dame fan, so he loved to go to the Notre Dame games, and because his son went to school there, so it was a long vacation, and also so he loved that, and then also his son ended up moving to Paris, so he couldn't see his grandkids, so he wanted to take a vacation. So what I ended up doing is I ended up giving him time off, extra vacation, because I knew how much it meant to him to take those 2 different vacations every year. And that was really the only vacations he ever took, was to go to the Notre Dame football game, and to go to Paris. And he wanted to go to Paris in not just a couple of days, but like a week or 2 at a time. So he got time to spend with his son and his grandkids. And that meant more to him than just, here's some money.
Right.
Because that meant it gave him time for his family. And his spouse, actually thanked me for some of this too, because he gets more time with his spouse too.
Yeah, and so it's taking time to get to know what does that individual value, and not just where should I get the gift card from? Should I get it from Shields or Cabela's? It's deeper than that. What is their family value? And so having time with the grandkids, how do you put a value on that? You can't. That is worth so much. But maybe even in a simpler example, for somebody that, went above and beyond to help during a snowstorm, maybe it's here's a free night at a hotel for you and your wife, and take your kids to the pool. What is that, $200 maybe? But that impact, having that little mini vacation for the young couple and their kids, that's huge. Those kids will never forget that. And then when things get tough at work, that's when the spouse, the husband, the wife, the kids are going to say, you know what? They are here for us. We are here for them. Absolutely. We support you in going above and beyond to help, your company, your employer. And so those little examples, I think, are worth way more than what we give them credit for. So those are a couple of examples. We also had a couple of others that are maybe a little less significant, but had some really good success with these. So wanted to share these as well. One of them was, and this sounds so silly compared to everything that we were just sharing, but a traveling trophy. I went to the local trophy store at the sporting goods store, and just had a little cup made, and it was just for our team. And then when somebody had a big day, they handed it off to the next person, and they'd take pictures with it, and we'd celebrate it. And, there were pictures of people drinking beer out of the cup, and Stanley Cup style. I couldn't believe how that $14 investment in a little traveling trophy impacted the overall morale of our team. So, John, any other examples that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, traveling. I love that's a great example. That's a really neat thing. I think group emails as well. Wade, you and I just had a conversation with a manager last week and about selling bushels, and they're all on a group email or group chat, something like that, and they were just celebrating, hey, I got this many, and now I got this many, and everybody was involved, and they're all like celebrating, and they're seeing the momentum and all of this stuff. And it's just fun to watch. It was fun to watch this manager light up when he was talking about this conversation, how the team came together, right? Because they're celebrating the wins, they're celebrating those little things that they're doing, and each one of them are raising the serotonin, and then now they're challenging each other, and all this is like, oh, we can do that, we can beat that, we can do more. And they had a record day, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they reached above and beyond because they said, you know what, this team is good enough, we'll get it done. And by the end of the day, they did. So this reminds me, I hadn't thought of this in a long time, but about 14 years ago, we had in a different organization, obviously, had a weekly Monday morning conference call. And then when I first joined the organization, it started off with somebody sharing the success that they had and sharing how they did it. And I looked forward to those so much, me with my collaboration strength, right? But I would learn from them, and then I would go out and I'd apply it to, I'd bring their solution and find more people that I could share that solution with. That's how that conference call started out. Over time, it became less and less about that and more about, here's what you got to do next. Don't forget to turn in this. Don't forget to do that. And there was a checklist of things that our manager didn't want to have to follow up with us on. So he just dumped them all out on the conference call. And guess what happened to the overall engagement on the conference call? It went to nothing. So people would look for any excuse not to be on there. And it became a battle about, do I have to be on the call or not? So it took something that was really good, celebrating the wins and people learning and growing from them, into this is an efficient way to check off stuff that we have to get done. So a couple of great examples here. How about one last celebration example? This has to be one of my all-time favorites. One of our trusted partners, they do a quarterly Catalina wine mixer. So if you are not familiar with the Catalina wine mixer, look it up. You'll understand. But the Catalina wine mixers are about bringing everybody together, celebrating, learning, growing, having a couple of cocktails, having a steak, but growing together. And it has completely transformed the culture of their organization. The last one that they had, I was not there, but I heard the next day, managers who were there were in tears just reflecting on how strong this team is now and the progress that they've made after a few of these quarterly get-togethers. So that is just a huge celebration. Hats off to them and the future success of their organization. But those are just a few ideas, guys. What else is possible? When you've come up with a good idea, share it in the Thrive Today app. Share it with other people. And that's how we're going to learn from each other and get more of this. All right. As we bring this thing in for landing, John, when we talk about accelerating, what does that mean to get more acceleration?
Yes. So we always talk about this like kind of equation thing, as how I view it, is appreciation plus celebration equals acceleration, right? So when we appreciate and celebrate, we accelerate the team, we accelerate our performance, and we accelerate our energy, our mood, like our attitudes, all of that, right? Because when we accelerate really means thriving. Like if we pull out our survivor's guide to thriving pyramid, how do we get from thriving to transcendence? Right? It's through this process. It's accelerating, right, through that and it's gaining that momentum and really taking it above and beyond of what we normally do, above status quo. Right? We celebrate the people that we work with. We appreciate them, everything that they do. That only leads to them going above and beyond what they normally would, because they actually feel valued and appreciated as an individual, not just what they do, but as an individual. And when I do that, I'm going to do more for you. I'm going to do more for the company than I normally would. And when we start doing that, we gain momentum. And that's when we accelerate our growth and our performance in the team.
Yeah, I love that. So you think about what it feels like to have momentum. That's when the wind is at your back. That's when things come easier, and the obstacles that used to stop us in our tracks, we now blow through them like they're not even there. And that's what it's like when things are thriving. And here's the watch out. When we feel the wind at our back, it's real easy to take our foot off the gas. And as soon as we do that, that's when we lose momentum. And we may not recognize when we've lost momentum until it is too late. And then you have to go back and build it back up again. So it's about leaning into it and loving the process, not just the result.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure to jump over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback, and it helps other people find the show. On that same note, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with a friend. As always, if you're looking for more resources to go from surviving to thriving, check out our website at www.markjeweltraining.com. That's Jewel with 2 L's. And you can find us under Mark Jewel Speaking and Training on all the major social networks. Remember, survival is dead. It's your time to thrive today. See you next week.